okay? Sometimes they get it wrong. And if you don't give people something to vote for, meaning if you don't have policy proposals, actual solutions that are appealing to voters, are they going to show up just to vote against the person you've been fear-mongering about? I don't think it's smart at all. Aside from that, I think what you're saying is also correct in that the conversation increasingly becomes dominated by lunatics. And I don't think that's representative of most Americans.
I don't understand. How were they not part of the lunatics? These are the largest channels on YouTube. TYT, I think they have 5 million. If somebody can correct me in the chat if you want. And I think he has like 5 million, over 5 million. You guys are the ones leading the conversation. So who are you describing? Because on TYT, there's a bunch of Marjorie Taylor Greene shit. Would you categorize her? You're talking, your content is based on all the extreme people that you're saying we shouldn't be talking about. Literally, TYT's content is Trump. It's, who was that girl, the lady from Arizona? I think her name is Carrie Lake for a while. Herschel, it's all the extreme people. So who are they talking about? It's how are the lunatics that is being dominated are by you two that are sitting here.
There's also this problem of lumping in everyone together in like this neat little box of ideology.
We watched,
right?
But
so
let's watch it again here.
I think in the minds of a lot of people on the left, you are the exact same person as Tucker Carlson, right? And I think you're different. I think you're different from Matt Walsh. I think you're different from Candace Owens. You guys are all on the same network. I commend you for having differences of opinion on the same network. And
I commend you for having differences of opinion on the same network. Ben Shapiro, Candace Owens, and whoever else she mentioned. That's really differences of opinion? Is that really differences of opinion?
And I'm sure it can be uncomfortable at times, but there are nuances and differences. And I think it's important for people to be cognizant of that because I don't want to be lumped in with someone on the far left, right?
The far left. What would be defined by the far left? Defund the police? Housing first? What is the far left to her? I can only go off your content, and I know you hate the homeless population. You can care less what the solution is. You just want them out of your sight. I know you're not down for defund the police, I believe. You're not down for pushing the squad, even though you'll do a couple of segments of where you yell.
I have significantly different opinions from them on certain matters. And I think it's important to know what those differences are and not let, again, the extreme ends of the spectrum represent.
So it's usually the far right, the far left, us radicals who are saying, don't lump us in with the left when you say left and liberals. Now the liberals are saying that. They don't want to be associated with defund the police. They don't want to be associated with anti-war or anti-imperialism. They don't want to be associated with socialism, I guess.
The entire country.
So, one of the things that you mentioned there is the idea that you have to run on something, not run against something. And obviously negative campaigning is the most effective form of campaigning, despite all of the happy talk about how when you campaign for things, people rally behind you. People who are policy wonks tend to do very poorly in elections. People who are attack dogs tend to do very well in elections because that lizard part of our brain that senses threat is really activated by a perception of threat on the other side.
Well, actually, can I interrupt you on that?
Sure.
Because I agree and disagree. So let's go back to 2016. Because with 2016 several years away, we can now really analyze it for what it was. Donald Trump's campaigning certainly had a significant negative component to it. Negative campaigning was part of what he did. But he also offered, or at least paid lip service to, something that Americans were concerned about, which was bringing manufacturing jobs back to the United States, really taking care of workers in our country, maybe reconsidering some of the foreign aid that the federal government shells
Yeah, he ran as a so-called right populist.
out. That appealed to his base, so much so that even today they're so loyal to him, regardless of what he does. So he actually did give people something to vote for. Whereas all we got from the Democratic Party during that election was, ooh, Donald Trump's dangerous. Isn't he so dangerous? Oh my God, don't vote for him because if you do, you'd be racist, this, that. It was just nonstop scolding. If that is what your strategy is, I don't think that it's a winning strategy, sometimes in the short term, but certainly not in the long term.
So that does raise the question as to what you think the Democratic Party should run on.
Right.
So the Democratic Party has radically shifted its appeal over the course of the last 15 to 20 years. If you go back to 2004, it was John Edwards running on sort of the Two Americas platform, which sounds a lot like sort of the language that Bernie Sanders uses when he talks about the United States, right? A lot of what he talks about is this sort of class divisions in the United States. It's very much focused on economic redistributionism, focusing on the blue-collar worker. This is obviously the audience that he's attempting to drive out to the polls. Meanwhile, the Democratic Party, if you look at it demographically, seems to have become the party largely of upscale white liberals who went to college and low-income minorities. And that's a very fragile coalition because the truth is that I'm not sure that those people have tons and tons in common. White upscale liberals tend to be very concerned with questions of equity far more than people who are actually low-income minorities, like by polling data. The sort of woke concerns that everybody on the right likes to pick on, that is white upper-crust liberals who are pushing that. That is not minorities who are pushing that sort of stuff. I remember having this conversation with Van Jones, and he was totally agreeing with me. He's like, what are all these white upper-crust liberals doing talking about this sort of stuff? They should be talking about sort of the bread and butter issues.
All of this stuff he's saying applies to Anna. Like this entire last sentence or two literally applies to Anna. He is describing Anna to a T.
And so you have the white upper crust liberals pushing that, plus a solid dose of kind of very social leftist policy ranging from abortion to transgenderism to same-sex marriage. And
isn't he describing her? Everything he's saying here is her. So let's see how this happens here. Let's see what happens here.
And those sorts of policies that are not the chief concern of low-income minorities. And it seems like the way that they're getting low-income minorities to sort of resonate to the message is with the threat assessment of the Republican Party. The Republican Party is racist. They don't like you. They hate you. Donald Trump's evil. And all the rest of that. It seems like they dodged the bullet in 2022, but that's a very fragile coalition.
Well, I see this as a problem.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I wonder, does she know that he was literally describing her? I wonder if he intentionally was describing her. How can you not
honestly
see that
on both
all
sides,
of her
campaigning on both sides? I think that increasingly you have both parties completely captured by campaign donations from wealthy donors, corporate donations. I think that's been a problem. That has led to pro-corporate policy by both Democrats and, Republicans have always been in that camp. But now Democrats have been so captured with that money. And then the other thing is, Ben, it's a huge problem that we have members of Congress invested in individual stocks that they are.
Do you know she just skipped over the point he made and she went completely to something different? Do you think that's not a tell that she knows what he just described as her? She just skipped over what he said and said, "No, I'm moving somewhere else, buddy." I can't. Let's listen to this last 30 or 40 seconds again.
2022, but that's a very fragile coalition.
Well, I see this as a problem, honestly, on both sides, campaigning on both sides. I think that increasingly you have both parties completely captured by campaign donations from wealthy donors, corporate donations. I think that's been a problem. That has led to pro-corporate policy by both Democrats and, I mean, Republicans have always been in that camp. But now Democrats have been so captured with that money. And then the other thing is, Ben, it's a huge problem that we have members of Congress invested in individual stocks that they are legislating about or legislating on. Because, first of all, that there's an insider trading issue there, number one, conflict of interest. And also, they're going to want their stock portfolios to perform well. So are they going to pass the right legislation to protect the consumer, to protect the worker, to protect the average American when they are literally invested in ensuring that those companies do real well because they profit off of that as well? So that is a huge problem. And so what you have now is both sides, in my opinion, campaigning on a bunch of BS, okay? Not actually focusing on what would improve this country for Americans, what would improve this country for the voters. It's just nonstop distractions. I mean, look, this is what we're seeing right now with the investigations in the House, right? The first thing Republicans said was, we're going to do investigations into Hunter Biden. We're going to investigate this. Fine, do the...
I don't understand. The Democrats did the same thing. They did the same thing with impeachment and January 6th. What is she talking about?
Investigations, I don't really care, right? I'm not some loyalist to the Bidens at all, by any means. But the culture war stuff, the investigations, it's really important for Americans to understand none of this stuff at the end of the day is going to improve your life. Okay.
So I guess this is what they're doing. They're talking in the same room, talking about each other, but pretending like they're talking about somebody else because she's describing him now. Does he not do culture war stuff? Is he not down for the investigations for Hunter Biden? So this is what the professional managerial class does, and then they label it like they're having a discussion to move the political conversation forward. You guys are describing a problem that both of you are the number one contributors to, and then describe details of the problem, which describes the opposite person, and everybody's pretending like y'all not talking about each other, like it doesn't apply to you.
Okay, so all the
These are two entities that see the value in bringing in two interviewers or two people, two political public figures who have platforms of 5 million each, seeing the advantage of interviewing, the entertainment value. That's all this is. There's no substance here. This is not, and this is not even a debate. So we can call it a fake debate, but this is not even a debate.